Last able to be president. It's September 11th, 2017. And you're in the Oval Office, and it's 9 p.m., and you hear that there's been a simultaneous attack on Times Square, on the Theater District, and on Yankee Stadium. You pick up the phone, and this is what you hear. What is the very first thing that you do?
Yeah, immediately that triggers two simultaneous things that need to happen. The first is you have to ensure that the local authorities have the federal resources necessary to respond to the attack that's occurred. God forbid it's a biological attack, God forbid it's a radioactive attack, whatever it may be, we have to ensure that the federal assets are available to immediately assist local authorities to deal with the casualties
No, but I'm asking
and
the
the destruction.
very first thing
Well,
you do.
these two things have to happen simultaneously. The second thing, you have to ensure that the federal resources are available to deal with the attack. The second is you have to immediately deduce, hopefully through a strong intelligence program, about whether this is part of a broader attack, whether more attacks are on their way, happening in other parts of the country or perhaps in that very city in the hopes of disrupting them or preventing them from occurring that night or that very day, the next morning. You want to ensure that it's not part of a broader wave. These two things have to happen at the exact same time. As part of that moving forward is you want to ensure that you gather the information necessary to identify who's responsible. In the world we live in today, they'll usually take credit
So
for
who
it.
are you calling?
Well, on these issues, the
Yes.
Department of Homeland Security is the first responder on the ground in terms of preventing or providing the resources necessary for the local communities. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the CIA, and other intelligence agencies are involved in deducing whether this is part of a broader attack. It may involve the use of military assets. For example, it involves airplanes that are involved in some of these attacks. Or if in fact there are waves of fighters or terrorists that are now popping up in other parts of the country. You need to coordinate that effort in conjunction with the military and local law enforcement. This is the immediate response. The broader response ultimately is you need to understand who's responsible for it, and there needs to be a consequence for what happened. And you need to go directly after the source of that attack in whatever safe haven they use to coordinate it. It leads to a broader point. This is a complex question, and you asked for a brief answer. There is no brief answer, because this is a very complicated thing. In addition to everything I've just outlined, we have to understand that the capability to conduct that sort of attack only exists when these radical terrorist groups have a safe haven from which to operate. So, for example, 9/11 occurred because al-Qaeda had a safe haven in Afghanistan, provided to them by the Taliban. Paris occurred, and the ISIS attacks are occurring because ISIS has a safe haven in Syria, in Iraq, and increasingly in Libya, from where they are training fighters and coordinating these attacks abroad. We should not allow these safe havens to exist. They should be targeted now so that the day you described never happens.
Mike, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to rephrase it.